The courtroom had never been louder. The gavel cracked like thunder as Judge Marlowe shouted for order. But the sound was lost beneath screams, raw, unfiltered, human. Janelle Carter fell to her knees, hands clenched so tight her knuckles split. Her son, Michael, stood motionless in shackles, his face void of expression. A reporter's flash went off, capturing the very moment Janelle's body collapsed onto the cold floor. The sentence had been given, life without parole. He was 17. In the chaos, no one noticed Michael's lips move. He whispered something to himself, to no one, to everyone. The bailiff wrestled with Janelle as she cried out her son's name again and again. The prosecutor smirked slightly. The judge called for order one more time, but it was pointless. Michael's eyes never blinked. They didn't reflect fear, or hate, or even pain. Just silence. Later, when asked what he had whispered as they took him away, the officer said it gave him chills. Michael had said, "This wasn't justice, this was revenge." The day had begun, like any other. Janelle had made breakfast, eggs, toast, tea, and ironed Michael's shirt like she always did on court days. He had thanked her gently, as always. They hadn't talked much in the car. The radio played gospel softly, a choir singing about light in darkness. She gripped the wheel tighter with each mile. Michael had sat quietly beside her, looking out the window, blinking more than usual. He didn't fidget, just breathed. She kept watching the rearview mirror, as if someone might stop them and say it was all a mistake. Outside the courthouse, the morning air was brisk, the sun too bright for the moment. Protesters murmured prayers. Reporters stood ready. Janelle took Michael's hand before they walked up the steps. She said, "No matter what happens in there, you are mine. You are love." He had smiled, but his eyes stayed hollow. They had never intended to stay for the full trial. It was supposed to be a formality, the attorney had said, a plea, a sentence, and then appeal work. But the moment the judge entered the courtroom, Janelle knew something was wrong. The DA wouldn't look her in the eye. Michael's public defender was late, sweat on his brow as he stumbled into the room. He didn't even have Michael's file in his hands. Janelle leaned in to whisper, but Michael just shook his head once. Silent. Waiting. When the sentencing was read aloud, Janelle couldn't hear the words. Her ears rang. She saw mouths moving, but no sound. Time froze. She only felt Michael's hand slide from hers, gently, like water slipping between fingers. That was the last time she would ever touch her son outside of prison walls. The ride home was silent. No gospel, no conversation. Just the road humming beneath them, and Janelle's knuckles white on the steering wheel. She pulled over once suddenly, and vomited onto the gravel shoulder. Pain didn't come in sobs. It came in silence. When she got home, she didn't go inside right away. She stood in the yard, staring at the front door, like it belonged to a life she no longer recognized. The sun had begun to set. Her neighbors pretended not to see. She finally walked in, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at Michael's untouched breakfast plate. The egg had hardened, the toast curled. And she wept for the first time, not in court, not in front of the press, but in her own home. Alone. That night, she found herself replaying the trial over and over in her head. Every stumble, every lie, every empty promise from a system built to devour boys like her son. She stared at his childhood photos lining the hallway, football medals, spelling bee certificates, birthday hats. Her boy was good, smart, kind, but none of that mattered. Not in that courtroom. She walked into his room and sat on his bed. Everything smelled like him. School papers on the desk. Homework half finished. She opened his last notebook and read the line scribbled across the top of a page. Hope is dangerous. She closed it gently. Tomorrow, she decided, she would start calling everyone. Filing appeals. Writing letters. The fight had only begun. Michael Carter wasn't supposed to end up behind bars. He was the quiet one. The honor roll kid. What? His teachers used to call him the calm in the storm. At home, he helped his mother care for her ailing sister, even skipped school once a week to drive her to dialysis. His room was always clean. His handwriting, perfect. He worked weekends at a greasy spoon diner, pouring coffee for regulars who barely knew his name. And when he wasn't studying, he was applying to colleges Janelle could never afford. There were moments, just moments, where it seemed like he might outrun the statistics. But the night everything changed, he was at a house party he didn't even want to attend. His best friend, Jordan, had dragged him there, promising it'd be low-key. Just music, laughs, maybe a drink or two. By midnight, Jordan was dead. By sunrise, Michael was in handcuffs. Janelle remembered the knock at the door. 3 heavy pounds, no greeting. She thought it was someone from church. But when she opened it, 2 officers stood there, stone-faced, hands near their belts. "Are you the mother of Michael Carter?" She could barely say yes before they told her he'd been arrested. Suspicion of murder. Her knees buckled, but she didn't fall. She refused to give them that. At the station, they kept her waiting for hours. No one would speak to her. When she finally saw Michael, his eyes were red but dry. He just whispered, "I didn't do it, Mama." That was all. No explanation. No breakdown. And in that silence, she felt the weight of every mother who ever lost a child to the system. She placed her hand on the glass between them and said, "Well, fight, I swear it." The public defender's office smelled like burnt coffee and paper. Files stacked high, phones ringing off the hook. Janelle sat across from a man in his 30s who never once looked her in the eye. "We don't have much to go on," he said, flipping through a thin folder. "But if we take a plea, maybe he'll get 20 years. That's the best we can hope for." She stared at him, stunned. "He didn't do anything," she said. "You're talking like he's guilty." The lawyer shrugged. "It's not about guilt. It's about what we can prove." Janelle stood up slowly, her voice calm but cutting. "If you won't fight for my son, then get out of the way." The lawyer didn't argue. He just returned to his pile of tragedies in progress. To him, Michael was just another case. But to Janelle, he was everything. At night, Janelle couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house sounded like a siren. She stayed up reading court documents, digging through Michael's school files, trying to find anything that could remind the world who he really was. She started writing letters to lawyers, journalists, local activists. Most never responded. The rest sent form replies. But Janelle didn't stop. Every morning before work, she'd print copies of police reports at the library, highlight inconsistencies, and make notes in the margins. She even made a chart on her wall, timelines, witness names, strange details no one else seemed to care about. People said she was obsessed. Maybe she was. But when the world moves on, and your child is left behind, obsession is all you have left. The last letter Michael wrote that week was shorter than usual. He usually asked about church, about their neighbor Mrs. Grant, about the dog that barked every morning down the street. But not this time. "Mom," it began, "I'm starting to forget what the sun feels like. There's a boy in here who screams at night. No one helps him. They just let him scream. I keep my head down. I don't talk. They say that's smart, but I feel like I'm disappearing. Like if I stopped writing, I'd vanish completely. I'm still here, Mom, but not for long." Janelle folded the letter carefully, pressed it to her heart, and sat in the quiet. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It was just the place where she waited to bring her son back. They told Janelle to move on. That it was over. That fighting the court was like yelling into a hurricane. Her pastor told her to trust God. Her boss gently suggested a leave of absence. Even her sister said, "You need to let it go, for your own health." But Janelle couldn't let it go. She started going to the scene of the party. The house was boarded up now, graffiti on the walls, grass grown high. She knocked on neighbors' doors, notebook in hand, asking if they'd seen anything, heard anything that night. Most said no. One older man muttered, "Too much noise, too many kids." I knew something bad was going to happen. But he gave her nothing more. Janelle stood in the driveway where her son had stood, looking out at a world that had no interest in remembering the truth. And she whispered, "Someone out there knows what happened, and I will find them." One name kept coming up, Elena Rivera. A girl from Michael's class. Shy, quiet, always in the background. She'd been at the party too, and she hadn't spoken to police. Janelle tracked her down to a small studio apartment on the edge of town. Elena opened the door, hesitant, eyes wide with fear. She looked younger than she was, frail, tense, hiding something. Janelle didn't push. She just said, "I'm Michael's mother. I think you know he didn't kill anyone." Elena didn't deny it. She invited her in. The apartment was silent, blinds drawn. After a long pause, Elena finally spoke. "He didn't do it, but he saw who did." Her voice cracked. "And if I talk, I'll end up like Jordan." Janelle's breath caught. "You think they'll hurt you?" Elena nodded. "I know they will." Janelle left with a name and a warning. Truth lived in fear now. 2 days later, Elena disappeared. Janelle returned to the apartment to follow up, but the door was ajar. Inside, lights off, drawers pulled open, a glass on the floor. No signs of violence, but everything felt wrong. Her bed still unmade, shoes left behind. Janelle called the police. They filed a report, but no one seemed in a hurry to act. "She probably ran off," one officer said flatly. Janelle felt rage rise like a fever. Another girl lost. Another witness silenced. She stared at the blank wall above Elena's bed and whispered, "I am not letting this go." Outside, the wind blew dust across the sidewalk. The city had already begun forgetting Elena Rivera. But Janelle never would. Janelle tried the press next. Local stations, online blogs, anyone with a voice. She emailed, called, even showed up in person. "There's a cover-up," she said. "A witness is missing. My son is innocent." Some were polite, others dismissive. "We'll look into it," they said. Then nothing. One reporter said off record, without proof, "It's just another sob story." Janelle walked out into the cold night air, more furious than ever. She looked up at the courthouse steps, bathed in artificial light. This wasn't about her grief anymore. It was about power. About how the truth was buried under headlines and locked file cabinets. She decided then, if they wouldn't give her a platform, she'd become one. Her voice would rise, even if it cracked. Even if no one listened. She would not be silent. Michael's letters had changed. The handwriting was still neat, but the words were different, sharper, darker. "They put me in solitary this week," one letter read. "Said it was for my protection, but it feels like punishment." He described screams down the hall. The sound of fists on metal. Guards who looked through you instead of at you. "There's a boy who stopped speaking," he wrote. "They beat him until he forgot how." Janelle read those words and felt her stomach twist. "I'm not scared of dying anymore," Michael wrote. "I'm scared I'll stop existing before I do." She held the paper like it was burning her hands. Her son wasn't just being locked up. He was being erased. And that was something she would never allow. The call came at 2:13 a.m. Janelle had fallen asleep at the table again, head resting on case notes and highlighter caps. The phone vibrated once, twice, and she answered without thinking. A voice, distorted, quiet, spoke through static. "You're right. The tape exists." Janelle jolted upright. Who is this? But the line clicked off. She stared at the screen. No caller ID. Heart pounding, she stood and grabbed her notebook, flipping to her chart of the crime scene. Across the street from the party house, a gas station. She hadn't noticed it before. She circled it, hard. The next morning, she was there before sunrise, staring up at the aging security camera on the corner post. It blinked faintly in the light. If that camera had recorded anything, it could destroy the prosecution's entire case. And maybe, just maybe, bring her son home. Janelle tracked down the gas station owner, a retired man named Benny with a smoker's cough and yellowed eyes. At first, he waved her off. They already asked me about that. Said it didn't matter. But Janelle wouldn't leave. She came back every day, brought coffee, brought photos of Michael. She told him everything about the trial, the missing girl, the injustice. Benny finally caved. I still got the backup drive, he said. Nobody ever took it. He handed her a worn hard drive, wrapped in a dish towel. It's yours now. Her hands shook as she took it. Back home, she plugged it into her laptop, heart racing. She scrubbed through hours of grainy footage until she saw it, her son, backing away from a fight, hands up. And then the Diaz nephew, shoving Jordan. No mistaking his face. Time froze. Janelle hit pause and whispered, "Got you." The boy in the footage wasn't just anyone. He was Daniel Red, the district attorney's nephew. He'd vanished after the trial, moved out of state, changed his name. Janelle learned all of this from an old friend of Michael's, Deshawn, who recognized Daniel in the footage and tracked him online. He's living in Arizona now, Deshawn said, flipping his phone around. Goes by Daniel Kane. Still out here living his life. Janelle's stomach turned. That boy had killed Jordan. And the system knew it. They buried the footage. Buried her son. She stared at Daniel's new life. Smiling pictures, a girlfriend, a dog, and felt a fire burn through her chest. They knew, she said. They all knew. Deshawn nodded. You gonna take it to the press? Janelle shook her head. No, I'm taking it to war. Janelle prepared a packet, footage stills, timeline summaries, character profiles. Everything a courtroom would need. She walked into the district attorney's office unannounced, pushed past the receptionist, and laid the evidence on the assistant Diaz's desk. Look at it, she said. He didn't. I'm not authorized to reopen anything, he said flatly. She leaned closer, voice low and lethal. Then authorize someone who can, or I'll make sure every damn person in this city knows what you buried. The man scoffed, but didn't throw the evidence away. That was enough. On her way out, Janelle passed a janitor in the hallway, an older black man who met her gaze and gave a single slow nod. She didn't know his name, but she felt the message. Keep going. That night, Janelle uploaded the footage to a dozen flash drives, sent copies to advocacy groups, legal watchdogs, even national news tips. She knew she was being watched now. She saw the same sedan parked across the street 2 nights in a row. But fear didn't stop her. It fueled her. She printed screenshots and taped them to her kitchen walls like armor. This is the truth, she said aloud, to no one. You can't erase it. Then came the call. A quiet voice. Female this time. Check your email. We have more. The attachment was a zip folder. Emails. Court transcripts. Evidence logs. All manipulated. All damning. She opened one marked confidential, do not forward. And there it was. A direct order from the DA's office to suppress the footage. Janelle exhaled slowly. The city had just handed her its smoking gun. Janelle returned to the courthouse, not to beg, but to declare war. She carried a binder full of evidence, a flash drive in her coat pocket, and fire in her eyes. The same doors that had swallowed her son now loomed before her again. This time she didn't flinch. Inside, she filed a motion for reconsideration, backed by proof of misconduct, fabricated reports, and a suppressed video. The clerk blinked, unsure of what to say, but took the documents. Janelle walked out without a word. Outside, the media was already gathering. Someone had leaked the footage. Reporters shouted her name. She didn't stop. Didn't speak. She had already said everything that needed saying. Her silence, sharp as glass, cut through the noise. And behind her the courthouse stirred, not in justice but in panic. The truth had been unearthed, and it would not go quietly back into the dark. Inside the Diaz office, panic spread like fire. Staffers whispered, closed doors slammed, and emails disappeared by the second. The district attorney, Howard Reed, stared at the footage playing on a screen in his office. There was no denying it. His nephew, Daniel, was clearly visible, clearly guilty. "Who let this out?" he barked. No one answered. "Get me the press team." And the judge. His assistant hovered nearby, silent, pale. She'd seen the leaked emails too. She knew what this meant. Outside, protesters began to gather. Young, old, angry, holding signs with Michael's face. "Free him now. Truth matters, we see you." The system had weathered storms before. But this wasn't a storm. This was an earthquake. And Janelle was the fault line. That night, the documents leaked. All of them. Every suppressed file, every email chain, every tampered witness log. Someone inside the DA office had sent them to major news outlets, advocacy organizations, and civil rights attorneys. The headlines spread like wildfire. Da covered up exculpatory evidence. Innocent teen in prison. By morning, Hash-free Michael Carter was trending nationwide. Talk shows debated it. Celebrities tweeted support. But Janelle wasn't watching the news. She was at the prison, waiting. An emergency hearing had been scheduled. Michael would finally get his day back in court. As she stood in the visitation room, hands clasped tight, her heart thudded against her ribs. Not with fear, but with readiness. "They tried to erase him," she whispered. "But he's still here." The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every bench. Activists stood shoulder to shoulder. Michael entered in shackles, flanked by guards. But this time his head was high. Janelle watched from the front row, clutching the edge of her seat. The judge looked uncomfortable, flipping through the documents. "And he went wide, unto Agnes. These revelations," he said, "are serious." The prosecutor tried to deflect, to downplay. But the evidence spoke louder than any denial. When asked if he had anything to say, Michael stood slowly. His voice, calm but sharp, pierced the courtroom silence. "You stole everything from me," he said, staring straight at Reed. "And you sleep just fine, but I'm the one who wakes up screaming." Gasps followed. The judge called for quiet. But it was already too late. The world had heard him. The judge ordered Michael's immediate release. The room exploded in noise, cheers, tears, reporters shouting over each other. Janelle rushed forward as guards unshackled her son. Their hug was fierce, unrelenting, 7 years of grief collapsing into a single breath. But Michael didn't smile. He walked past the cameras, past the applause, past the headlines. Outside, he took a long breath of open air. Then he knelt at the memorial wall beside the courthouse, where Jordan's name was etched in black marble. He whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner. I thought silence was safer." Behind him, Janelle stood, silent. She had brought him back. But the victory was hollow. Justice had been served, but far too late. Freedom was quieter than Michael expected. No grand moment. Just a cold metal gate buzzing open, and the sky waiting beyond. Janelle stood beside him, unsure if she should touch him, or just let him breathe. He walked out slowly, each step hesitant, as if the ground might vanish beneath him. Photographers shouted his name. A few called out questions. He didn't respond. Janelle stayed close, her hand hovering but never landing. When they reached the car, he paused, staring at the passenger seat. "It feels smaller," he said. His voice cracked. Janelle whispered, "You're not the same boy who left it." He nodded once, opened the door, and sat down. The world moved on outside. But inside that car, time stood still, for just a moment, as a mother and son tried to remember how to be a family again. Michael's room was exactly how he left it, neatly made bed, textbooks still stacked, calendar frozen on the date of his arrest. He stood in the doorway for a long time, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the walls like a stranger. Janelle stayed back. She had cleaned it every week, dusted it, kept it alive. Now, it felt like a shrine. Michael stepped inside and picked up a photo, him and Jordan, arms thrown around each other, grinning at some forgotten joke. His fingers trembled. "I don't remember this moment," he said. Janelle came forward slowly, voice soft. "That's okay. I remember it for both of you." He didn't speak again. He sat on the edge of the bed, eyes fixed on the wall. He had returned to the same place, but nothing was the same. Janelle took Michael to the diner where he used to work. The manager, Mrs. K, hugged him like a long-lost son. "You still like banana pancakes?" she asked, tears in her eyes. Michael tried to smile. The bell above the door jingled behind them as familiar customers looked up. Some smiled. Others looked away. A few whispered. Michael sat in the corner booth where he used to serve. The syrup bottle felt heavier in his hand than he remembered. "Everyone's proud of you," Janelle said gently. He didn't look at her. "No, they're not. They're just relieved I wasn't a monster after all." The pancakes arrived. He stared at them, unmoving. Janelle reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "You're still here. That's what matters." And for once he didn't pull away. The nightmares came every night. Michael would wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, the echo of screams still ringing in his ears. Janelle would rush in, sit on the edge of his bed, and wait. He never talked about what he saw in solitary. He just stared ahead, fists clenched in the sheets. During the day, he wandered, took long walks, avoided crowds, avoided mirrors. Once, Janelle found him sitting on the back porch, staring at the sky. "Do you ever feel like you're not real anymore?" he asked. She sat beside him, pulled a blanket over their shoulders. "You're real," she said. "You survived what should killed you. That makes you more real than anyone I know." He nodded but didn't speak. And they stayed like that, in silence, beneath a sky that never judged. Michael started writing again. At first just notes in the margins of old notebooks. Then poems. Then letters he never sent. His words poured out like rain, slow and steady. Janelle read them one night when he left the journal open. One line stuck with her. "I lost time, but I didn't lose myself. Not completely." She brought it to church, asked the pastor to read it aloud. The congregation wept. The story spread. A youth center offered Michael a chance to speak. He refused. Then, a week later, he walked in unannounced and sat beside the kids. "I'm not here to save you," he said. "But maybe I can show you what to run from." They listened. Really listened. His words didn't come like a preacher's, they came like a survivor's. And in that moment, Michael Carter began to live again. The courthouse looked different now. Not because the building had changed, but because Michael had. He stood on the steps again, this time in a suit, not cheap or borrowed, but his own. A young boy was being escorted in, cuffed and hunched, surrounded by officers. Michael recognized the fear in the boy's eyes. It was the same fear he carried years ago. He didn't move, didn't call out. He just watched. Behind him reporters whispered, unsure whether to approach. Janelle stood at the base of the steps, eyes on her son. "You don't owe anyone anything," she said. Michael gave a small nod. "I know," he replied. "But maybe I owe it to him." He wasn't sure what that meant yet, but something stirred inside him. Something steady, not broken. He wasn't just a headline anymore. He was a man still standing. Michael visited Jordan's grave every week. Not for comfort, there was none to be had, but for accountability. Today, he brought a folded letter, handwritten. He knelt by the headstone, pressed the paper to the earth, and whispered, "I'm still trying to make it right." The graveyard was empty, except for a gardener in the distance, quietly trimming weeds. Michael sat for a while, speaking softly, like he used to when they were kids. They buried both of us, he said. Only difference is I climbed back out. He placed a worn Polaroid, one of them both, arms around each other, high school jackets, beside the stone. Then he stood, brushing off his pants, jaw clenched. They won't forget you, he said. I'll make sure of that. He walked back to the car with purpose, no longer afraid of his shadow. An invitation came in the mail. Simple cardstock, no logo, just a return address. State Commission on Wrongful Convictions. They wanted Michael to speak. At first, he threw it in the trash. Then, days later, he fished it out, smoothed the creases, and read it again. Janelle said nothing, just left a clean shirt folded on the bed. When he walked into the hearing room, silence fell. Some in the audience were survivors like him. Others were lawyers, students, officials. He stood at the podium, adjusted the mic, and stared out at the crowd. You want to hear about justice, he said. Then listen closely, because justice isn't what saved me. My mother did. Gasps and murmurs followed, but he continued, voice steady, eyes hard. The truth was buried. She dug it out. So if you're here to fix the system, start by admitting it's broken. After the hearing, people came up to shake Michael's hand. Some were crying. Others offered business cards, speaking in hopeful tones. But Michael drifted toward the back of the room, where Janelle waited. She hadn't said a word during the whole speech, just watched. You did good, she said quietly. Michael looked at her, eyes searching. I don't feel proud, he admitted. Just tired. She nodded. You're allowed to be both. Outside, a storm was gathering. Thunder rolled in the distance. Atundiao, shrew. Janelle pulled an umbrella from her bag. Michael shook his head and stepped into the rain. I need to feel it, he said. So they walked together side by side, no umbrella, no words. Just rain, cleansing everything it touched. Not erasing the past, but soaking it deep so it couldn't be ignored. Months later, Michael stood once more outside the courthouse, same steps, same sky, different case inside. A new trial. A new boy. Same charges. Same background. Michael watched as reporters filed in, as attorneys joked over coffee, as the machine of justice cranked into motion again. He adjusted his collar, straightened his shoulders. A small film crew nearby asked for a quote. He ignored them. Instead, he looked directly at the courthouse doors, then at the camera, and finally spoke. Justice isn't blind, it's just expensive. He turned and walked away. Behind him, a gavel slammed. A door shut. The wind picked up, scattering old protest flyers across the pavement. And in the silence that followed, you could almost hear it. The sound of something shifting, slowly but undeniably, toward truth.